Well, good morning, everybody from around the world. My name is Aaron Duff. I am part of the Austrade education team. And no, I'm not based in Peru or Chile or these other places. I'm in Adelaide. However, I'm very fortunate to be joined by my colleagues from that part of the world. And today we will be, as the presentation indicates, talking about sponsored student programs coming from the Latin America region. Thank you in the first instance for joining us. Today's session is a second of a series of three that we are holding. The first we had looking at the region of Southeast Asia last month. Of course, we have today for Latin America. And then in 2 weeks' time, we also have one covering the Middle East. So please keep an eye out on your Eddie newsletter for that one. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We are covering the 7 markets of Chile, Paraguay, Colombia, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, and Peru. This is all done in advance of a significant research report that we are putting together looking at foreign sponsored student programs from around the world, and fingers crossed we'll be able to release that next month, but that report will be available for our premium Eddie subscribers. So that's always a good time. Now is as good time as ever to join Eddie and to get access to that report. And today's webinar will also be available for those premium subscribers afterwards. Unfortunately, today, due to the number of markets, it's not going to be super comprehensive, and we will not be able to have questions and answers at the conclusion. However, each of my colleagues in market are happy to field your questions outside of this webinar, so please make contact with them if there's a particular program or two that you're interested to inquire about further. As I said, there's 7 markets today, but I'll also mention that in the report we will be covering Brazil as well, looking at particularly their high school scholarship programs, as well as 1 or 2 others. So today's webinar, we'll jump straight into it, and I will pass over first to my colleague Scott Bennett, who will introduce the markets of Chile and Paraguay for us. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for joining. So as Aaron mentioned, my name's Scott. I'm the Business Development Director for Education, based here in the Australian Embassy here in Santiago in Chile. But I do also cover Paraguay from here. So I'll kick off with the program in Chile. So it's called Becas Chile. Becas means scholarship in Spanish. So many of you may be familiar with the program. It's a long-running program. It's been going since 2008 in its current format. So a lot of you might know it as CONICET. But a few years ago, when Chile's Ministry of Science was created, they created a new agency which is called ANID, which is the National Research and Development Agency, which is part of the Ministry of Science. So I won't go into too much detail about what the scholarship covers, but it is 100% scholarship, and it's a traditional scholarship. It's not a loan scholarship or anything like that. So basically covers the students 100% with everything that obviously could be required, including visas, obviously fees, stipend, etc. So currently the program, it's still a relatively large program. This year they financed around 238 places across the different calls that we follow, so it's a postgraduate scholarship for masters, PhDs, and masters in education. And they do have smaller calls as well for postdoctoral studies, etc. So it's still a relatively large program. It opens in March and April each year. So that's obviously now is a good time to be sort of promoting and talking to students because they do require an offer letter to obviously apply to the scholarship. So just looking here, so I mean, in general, it's obviously it is a highly competitive program. The students are some of the best students in Chile. They can apply with a conditional offer, so the funds do also include English language preparation prior to the starting the studies, so they can apply with a conditional letter. It's very focused on rankings, but it is a source of confusion sometimes for universities. So ANID, the sponsor, they come up with their own rankings using their own methodology in 39 subject areas. So it's very focused on research output and research impact. So that probably can sometimes confuse universities that are sort of using their QS or their Times rankings. So, it's all published on, everything's very transparent, all published on ANID's website, so you can check where you are ranked. In general, they will cover all areas of study, but definitely over the last they've always had priority areas, which tend to be, I guess, the sort of the areas you would expect, such as, climate change, renewable energy, etc. Currently, the priority areas are artificial intelligence, security and cybersecurity, and climate change. So they don't have to be programs necessarily directly focused on those areas. So it doesn't have to be, an MSc in climate change or AI, but it has to be a program that's broadly related to those industries. So we've definitely seen a shift over the last few years to significantly more of the funding, probably around 60 to 70% of the places have gone to those priority areas. So that looks like continuing, so we do recommend probably to focus your efforts on students that are going to be applying to those areas. It is very transparent, so they have academic committees to evaluate the applications, and so a lot of that, again, won't go into too much detail, but it's linked to obviously the students' academic backgrounds, the relevance of the studies or the program to the country, how they plan to use those studies, etc. But definitely the university ranking is it varies, but it's normally about 20 to 30% of the score. So highly competitive calls, that does make a difference. So we have seen definitely the funding, unfortunately, has dropped off slightly, well, significantly since the pandemic. And into the sponsor as well, they've been quite public that they're starting to focus more of their funding on national scholarships. But definitely that there are still over 200 places there that we can students that we can attract to Australia. And in looking down into the data, I mean, you can see there are normally 5 to 6 key local source universities here. So based in the main cities, Santiago, Concepcion, and the sort of Viña, Valparaiso area, which is quite close to Santiago. So again, we definitely recommend developing good partnerships with those universities. And it's not directly part of the Becker's Chile program, but ANID does also have funding for co-tutel, so for joint PhDs, and that's certainly something that they would be keen to see more of. And we also think that's a real opportunity for, obviously, for Chilean and Australian universities to develop those partnerships. In terms of best practice for engaging with the scholarship body, so with ANID, so we have a very close relationship with them, so we can certainly facilitate contact. Definitely, it's public sector. It's not a massive team. So, and obviously they work with universities from all over the world. So they probably have hundreds of agreements. So definitely, we recommend doing everything in a timely fashion. It can take time to set up an agreement, obviously, once lawyers check it, etc. So definitely, you know, plan to engage with a good amount of time. An agreement's not necessary. It doesn't, a student doesn't have to go to a university that has an agreement with ANID. And it's very transparent. It's completely separate. So ANID won't give additional points or anything to students that are applying to a university with an agreement, so that they keep that completely separate. But it can obviously give you additional visibility and I guess additional credibility. It is published on their website, etc. And also, obviously, because ANID funds everything, so a fee discount doesn't necessarily directly benefit the student. So again, it could be recommended to include in the agreement, tangible benefits that will, go directly to the student. So whether that's, accommodation discounts or some additional support where the student will, really see the benefit. The other thing as well, so unlike maybe some of the other countries in the region, so the emphasis really is on the institution and Austrade to promote the benefits of Australia and to promote our institutions. So ANID do a lot of really good online webinars and things to give students tips, but they don't have large sort of recruitment fairs or things like that. They do participate, for example, in our fairs when we have them. But really the emphasis is on us to be encouraging students to apply to the scholarship with their Australian offer. So as I mentioned, we do have we've just had a large fair called Vente Australia. So ANID were there presenting, they did a client briefing. We have done sort of study in Australia webinars with ANID. So there's, and again, as I mentioned, very happy to obviously facilitate any contact with them if you're interested in agreements or, helping with any communication around renewals, etc. In terms of tips for applicants, so again, ANID gives a lot of training, a lot of help to make students submit a good application. One of their biggest tips is to make sure that students are including an appropriate academic reference. Often the students think that the sort of having the vice chancellor of the university or something will help, but often it comes through that they clearly don't know the student that well. So they always recommend having an actual a supervisor or a lecturer that gave them classes that can really give a detailed reference. Also, they say a very common mistake is just not uploading clear documents. So a lot of students actually just miss out with something so simple like that. And as I mentioned, in a very competitive pool, the university ranking really does matter. And so again, a lot of students don't check that it is published online. So really, realistically speaking, to get the full marks, students should be applying to a top 100 university in the subject area in ANID's ranking. And again, that's good for Australia. We have some units, so there are 39 subject areas. Some Australian universities are ranked top 100 in well over 30. And I think we have about, in any given year, about 25, 26 universities that are ranked top 100 in at least one area. So we're a very attractive destination for students. Okay. Thanks. And I think if you can, Jin, if you can pass over to Bekal, please. Thank you. Okay, so Bekal is in Paraguay. So it's also a relatively well-established program. So this has been running for 10 years now. So Bekal actually has 2 calls per year, so one in March and one in September. So the one in September is particularly interesting for Australia because That's for students that will be starting their course in semester one. So obviously that aligns nicely with the Australian academic year. Beckhouse in general there is a limit, so they normally will fund up to 70% of the studies, and the students have to commit to making up the difference. Um, so again, it's a large program. I think on the current call, which has just closed, there were 200 places available, 200 scholarships available, and a similar number in the first call earlier on in the year. So we're looking at probably around 400 places per year. So it is mainly focused on postgraduate studies. So again, masters, PhDs. They separate the calls into the private sector and for public and for public servants, which does slightly change um, the criteria in terms of rankings they use. But they do also have calls for undergraduate exchange and for language programs. So they do use QS, Times, Shanghai for the master's calls, but also interestingly, they will also look at the Becas Chile rankings for PhD studies. So again, it depends on the area of study and if you're a public sector or private sector worker, but those normally the universities have to be between the top 50, top 300, depending on the area. So again, they are increasingly looking at priority areas, which again are the areas you would expect, but quite detailed, significantly more detailed. Well, or they break it down a lot more than the Becca's Chile, for example, which tend to be more general. So again, there's in terms of sort of market updates, so there is a new funding call for online courses, which I think it could be particularly interesting for Australia, obviously with a well-developed market for online and digital education. So that will fund, I think it's up to, again, depending on public, private sector, but courses of up to 5,000, 8,000 US dollars for up to 12 years, and they have to be completed in 12 months. So that's definitely a new opportunity that could open this year. They're also it's still small, but they are trialing at the moment subject area rankings. So at the moment they use institutional rankings, but they are increasingly, or they're working on a pilot, which again probably would be, I guess, beneficial for Australia and open it up, obviously, opportunities to more universities. And the funding for this program has been approved until 2030. So it's a program that we expect to continue for the foreseeable future. So again, agreements aren't necessary, but obviously an agreement and a discount in this case, as there is a maximum amount that they will fund, particularly for PhDs. So they'll fund up to US $50,000 for master's studies and 90,000 for PhD studies. So obviously any discount there does have a tangible benefit to the student and can obviously make your university more attractive in that sense. Again, in terms of initiatives with sponsors, so they do or sometimes organize their own fairs. Agents as well are organizing fairs with Becal, and we also do client webinars, and once again can facilitate obviously contact and introductions with the Becal team. So again, tips. So there are some additional things that students should take into consideration. So as part of their contract with Becal, they're not supposed to work, but they can undertake placements as part of their studies. Again, obviously, university ranking is very relevant. And once again, similar to Chile, they do applications are evaluated by an academic committee. So students should make sure that they're obviously responding to the areas of interest and priorities for the academic committee. Okay, so I think that's probably enough from me, but again, happy for people to reach out with any further questions. And I'll now pass over to my colleague Camila, who's based up in Bogota. Thanks, Camila.
Thank you very much, Scott. Good afternoon. I'm here with my colleague, Natalia Plested. We both oversee the Colombian market, and today we'll give a snapshot about Colfuturo, which is potentially the most important scholarship in the region. But I would like to highlight that, as many other scholarship programs, this program is currently facing changes. That's why it would be very difficult for a new university to engage effectively and actually have students recruited and supported by this scholarship program. So I will focus on the insights of the program for those institutions that have already had students going through these programs. And if other participants would like to hear more about how to first engage with the program, we can discuss it offline. The first important parameter here to highlight is that this is a program that's focused on high standards, and those high standards come in come from different rankings, not only the traditional global rankings. So it's not for universities who would like to compete with courses that are not at the same level as those top courses in traditional high quality destinations. Colfuturo has a sophisticated software that gathers different rankings from global rankings by subject, rankings related to research, magazines, etc. So the program already has their quality measures in place, and those do not need to be provided by the institutions. Colfuturo has also a scholarships or an agreement scheme by which universities can provide additional scholarships to the ones offered by the program. This is a credit scholarship program because it is initially a loan, and then if some conditions are fulfilled after graduation, then part of that loan becomes a scholarship. Those 14 agreements that Australian universities have in place provide additional scholarships for the students. Australia has been doing very well in the past few years. Australian universities have achieved amazing results, especially in the last round, where Australia finished second as the most popular destination, following the UK and overtaking US, which is the first time in history. In previous years, Australia has overtaken other destinations that are familiar and very popular for Colombian students, such as Spain, Canada, the Netherlands, Argentina. So Australia is currently in a very positive position. So now moving to insights or unique takeaways. The first one is that it's a very, very transparent process that's numbers based, and those numbers relate to 4 different factors by which the students compete. The first one is the GPA of the student in their undergrad degrees. The second one is the rating given to the program they are applying with. The third one depends on quality measures achieved by the student at university, or even having just a letter of offer. And the fourth one is an essay, which is more strategic because the weight is not too much. The number of scholarships that Colfuturo awards depends on budget. 2 years ago, Colfuturo awarded 2,000 scholarships. Last year, it was reduced to 1,000, and it is uncertain what the number will be for the next round, but it could be lower than the past round. Australia did very well despite the reduction last year, with 206 students selected. Many universities and us have engaged with the scholarship body for years at different levels, but that engagement, or having a solid engagement with the scholarship body, does not guarantee selections, because again, it's a numbers game, and it's a very transparent process. So only high quality students that have achieved high scores in those 4 factors guarantee selections. In terms of best practice for engaging with this sponsor, I think that the most important part is creating a pipeline of quality applications, because if there are not quality applications in place, then students won't be selected. I think some universities have spent significant efforts in the last few years engaging with the scholarship body, but not necessarily doing enough to create that pipeline of applications. It helps to provide information on those courses that are high ranked and that can compete at that level that CoFuturo requires, because although CoFuturo has 2 panels to identify those quality measures, getting those that information from the universities helps. CoFuturo also has an expert panel where students or where applications are assessed by expert academics in different fields. So supporting academics from different universities to attend is also a good practice. We have done a lot in the past 10 years for this program, and with this program, we take part in government panels across different cities in Colombia as part of the roadshow they have. We have supported visits by academics. We are part of those academic panels, highlighting academic credentials of Australian universities. We have supported state governments to invite CoFuturo officials for family trips. So I think everything that needed to be done from our side to pave the way for universities to be part of the program has been done. We have also done a lot of capacity building on education agencies so that once a pipeline is created, they understand those quality standards required and they understand the formula of the numbers game that I was previously mentioned. I think the main tip for applicants is that they need to focus on quantitative information more than qualitative, because again, this is a formula and there are different tools also that we have created to share with the local reps of universities, with education agencies, so the applications are more suitable. We have analyzed the last 5 years of applications, and we have a very clear understanding of what those quality measures are. And we have done different training sessions to be able to understand those. Australia had 808 applications in the last round, only 206 were selected. So analyzing the data that comes from those 800 is very useful to understand what a suitable and what a high quality application is. So this is just an overview and some tips on and insights on CoFuturo as a scholarship program, but happy to support anyone who would like to hear more about engaging with this program, or who would like to hear more about the data that we have gathered and analyzed, because that data is very, very useful to understand where those top students are coming from, how to target those students through digital promotion, through agencies, and how to recruit those students. Thank you very much. Now I will pass on to my colleague, Laura.
Thank you, Camilo. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Diaz, and I'm the Business Development Manager based in Mexico City. And from this embassy, we are accredited to Guatemala, Honduras, and the rest of Central America. So I'm going to briefly explain the programs that we have in Guatemala, which is Guatefuturo, and in Honduras, which is Hondufuturo. So both programs are modeled after ColFuturo, and actually ColFuturo is always in close consultation. So what Camilo just explained about the formula and how it works, that translates into how these both programs operate. So the process is quite rigorous to evaluate the assessments. We have one yearly call for each of the students. And in the case of Guatemala, Australia is very well positioned, just behind Spain and the UK as the main recipients. So the number of institutions that have agreements with Guatefuturo are 7, and usually these institutions already have agreements with ColFuturo. So they use the agreements with ColFuturo to have a benchmark regarding quality to these institutions, and it's important for these institutions to have agreements in order for them to work with Guatefuturo. Similar to ColFuturo, this scholarship has a loan component, and the amount that they grant is in US dollars, but some of the amount can be waived under certain conditions. Regarding Austrade's involvement with Guate Futuro, we exchange data and insights on an ongoing basis, and we also participate at events and panels. And whenever there's an Australian institution interested in engaging with Guate Futuro, we are more than happy to facilitate those connections. It is really important to mention that in recent years, the number of students that have gone to Australia has been increasing, and that they are really well represented across STEM areas, and that the process is quite transparent and rigorous in terms of all the steps that the Guatemalan students need to follow up in order to gain, that scholarship. So I'm happy to move on to the Honduras one, please. And just as I was saying, the model is practically the same. Regarding Honduras, the loan and the number of recipients is smaller than for Guatemala. So this year, for example, they had 36 students going to different countries. And regarding Honduras, the proportion of students that go to Australia is less than from Guatemala. So for example, the top 3 countries for Honduran students are Mexico, Spain, and the US. However, the process works the same. And if your institution has already an agreement with Colfuturo, that facilitates and speeds up the process quite a lot regarding the decision of Colfuturo to have an agreement with you or not. And again, the process is quite rigorous. They have a formula that's available, on their website so that you can see how the selection process works. And they only have 1 call per year. So can we move on to Mexico, please? So regarding Mexico, we have 2 main sponsors. So the first one is FIDER. So FIDER is a trust fund by Mexico's central bank. And for FIDER, FIDER funds master's degrees, PhDs, and some specializations as well. And in the case of FUNED, it is a private scholarship loan, and they only fund master's degrees. So because of the nature of Mexico and that we previously had a fund that used to fund masters and degrees related to science. Usually both FIDER and FUNED are mainly for students in the management and business space. So they fund other areas as well, but this is where the main concentration of students go to management or business related degrees or degrees in the social sciences space. Jean, can you move into the next one, please? Thank you. So for both of these funds, something that's different from, for example, On the Futuro and Guate Futuro, is that the offers must be unconditional. So this is key because we know that, for example, sometimes we have students that need a couple of weeks of English, but in the case of both FIDER and FUNED, the offers must be unconditional. Regarding FIDER, the requirements are more flexible. So if you do not have an agreement with the Mexico Central Bank, it is not necessarily, but there's an added benefit because of this agreement, your students would have a discount in tuition fees. And for FIDER, for example, they fund up to roughly 65,000 AUDs for up to 2 years, and the funds can be used to cover any type of expense. It can be used to cover tuition fees, flights, accommodation, and other types of expenses. Whereas for FUNED, you do need to have an agreement for them to receive funding, and there's a criteria that only funds the top 200 universities in the world. So this is very important, and FUNED's funding is available in US dollars. So they fund up to 30,000 US dollars up to 2 years, and under certain conditions, both can be waived a certain percentage. It is important to mention that It doesn't matter if you want to promote yourself for FIDER or FUNED. Given Mexico's lack of awareness of Australia as a destination, it is really important that even before you promote your institution and your courses, that you promote Australia as a destination first. Because traditionally, the vast majority of both recipients go either to the US, the UK, or Spain. So it's really important to mention this. And something also to mention is that it is great if you can speed up the issue of the unconditional offers so that students can apply at an earlier stage. Usually FIDER has 3 calls per year and FUNED has 1 call per year, which is open almost 6 months a year. So that would be it from my end, and I'm happy to pass it on to my colleague Jorge.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, everyone in Australia. Good afternoon here in Peru. I'm Jorge Lopez Palma, and I look after the Peruvian market in a proactive way, in a reactive way, also Bolivia. So we have in Peru 2 different schemes. One comes from the Peruvian government through PRONAVEC. The name of the scholarship is Beca Bicentenario. This scholarship born in 2014. And since then, Australia is the English-speaking country with most of the PRONAVEC awardees. We have until this year 309 awardees. This is a public entity, so it has some challenges to work with PRONAVEC, but one of my roles is to help all of you to have and receive students from Peru through PRONAVEC. This is a very competitive scholarship. It's a comprehensive scholarship as well, because actually PRONAVEC pays absolutely everything that the student needs to go to Australia. Not only tuition fee, but also allowances, air tickets, health insurance, and everything that is needed. And they receive each month an extra allowance just to focus in their studies, as they are not entitled to work. May I see the next slide, please? PRONAVEC works in a very peculiar way. They see, first of all, the student GPA, of course, because they just recruit students with an excellence level. Also, they recruit only universities who are ranked in the QS 400 or in the Times. And they are also ranking those universities that are part of those ranks that are given any kind of discounts on the tuition fee. They also assess us, Austrade, on the level of engagement and how we showcase the PRONAVEC scholarship. So the addition of all of this makes the awardees actually receive one of these scholarships. It's very competitive. They only got 185 scholarships per month. This scholarship is pretty focused on STEM disciplines. And that's why, because Peru is pretty strong on mining, agriculture, fishery, and everything that requires to be exported. So the match with Australia is perfect. And that's why we have a range of 22 up to 25 awardees each year, more or less. We have some years with more or less students that receive the scholarship. This market is pretty higher education focused. That's why this scholarship, which is just focused on master and PhD, is so successful. This scholarship requires an unconditional letter, and each student should meet the English level already before applying. So that's good to the Australian universities because they don't need to provide extra classes, and they just give an unconditional letter in order to receive the students. The unconditional letter should reflect the percentage of discount that you agree to give to the students, and that's very important for the assessment. PRONAVEC doesn't require to sign an MOU, but I know I'm aware that some of our Australian universities require the signature of an MOU with a scholarship entity. If is the case, PRONAVEC is open to do it. They have their own template, so they will send it to you, and depending on how you see the template, is ready to be signed, or you may do some changes. It's what we've been doing, and little by little and pretty slow, we've been working. But as I told you, we have most of the awardees as an English-speaking country. We've been working with Pronavec quite a lot. We are part of the annual fair. We do several webinars with them as well, and we work closely with our agents. I try to be with our agents in all their activities. I'm trying to invite always Pronavec and the BCP Bank in order to provide to students the full package and all the view of the possibilities on how to finance their travel and their studies in Australia. We also been working with a PR agency, and we showcase Australia's study destination. All those universities are giving discounts to Pronavec and to the BCP Bank, and showcasing, of course, Pronavec and the BCP Bank. So that's more or less how we've been working, sorry, I'm ill, with Pronavec. The second scheme that we got is a loan. This is a private loan with the BCP Bank. The BCP Bank is the biggest private bank in Peru, and they designed for us a specific loan for those clients who decide to choose Australia as a study destination. This is just for Australia, and the 41 universities in Australia are part of this scheme. The bank is giving a loan to the students that has a rate of the 9% per year. But the beauty of this loan is that the bank is giving to students 30 months of grace. That means that the student who got the loan could go to Australia studying their master's degrees or PhDs, and then when they come back to Peru, they can start paying the loan. They don't need to leave a collateral, such as a mortgage or any kind of collateral. This year, we are quite lucky. We have 16 Australian universities who are giving an extra discount to the BCP clients. Why? Because they are part of a PR campaign done by the bank. So that provides to all of our universities the possibility to grow their pipeline of students. They are pre-qualified. The bank has already known their level of income and, of course, of studies. And it's the way that we can provide to your agents a strong pipeline of students. Last year, 2024, Peru it's been just below Brazil and Colombia on recruitment, and mostly focused on higher education and mostly on STEM disciplines. So we got the Pronavec as a scholarship, fully paid for students and also university, and the BCP Bank loan that is an extra tool that we're provided to agents and to students to go to study in Australia. So in a nutshell, this is what we got in Peru. I'm happy to answer questions whenever you want into my email or by video. Thank you. And I think that the next one is Aaron.
Yes, thank you, Jorge. And thank you indeed to all of our presenters from Austrade today. As you can tell, there's a number of scholarship opportunities available in Latin America. And here at Austrade, we stand ready to support and help you and your institution in exploring those opportunities. Please, you can see on the slide I've got right now, we've got some QR codes for our next webinar, which is also scholarships focused looking at the Middle East. That's going to be held on November 25. And once again, that's in advance of the sponsored student programs report that we look to release at the end of this year. Today's presentation is also to be found on our Education Data and Insights platform, also known as EDI, and that's what those other QR codes are there. It's a valuable resource of information, not just for Latin America, but indeed all of Australia's key education markets. With that, thank you for joining us today. Thank you again to my Austrade colleagues who presented and those behind the scenes who helped put this together. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Have a great day.